I'm Meredith. My name is Liz Hopper, and
I'm Anthony Villa, and tonight we're going to talk about some trends in technical communication involving animation and multimedia.
First we're going to start out by defining some definitions. Simply put, multimedia is the integration of two or more types of media. Meredith, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Guess we can't do it.
Hello?
Call it back.
Yes, I'm sorry. My battery on my other headset died and I had to switch phones. So my apologies.
Okay, well, we will rewind and start over.
Yeah, please. My apologies, you guys. Sorry.
Hey, why
Why
not have technical difficulties like we have? All right, we're going back to the beginning. Okay. All right, start over. Are you there? Hello?
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
I'm here.
Okay.
Okay. So we're going to start with our definitions, and simply put, multimedia is any combination of types of media, whether that be visual or kinetic or verbal or oral. But in particular, digital media, multimedia is the integration of different basic information types where the info can be transmitted, processed, and represented digitally.
Yeah, and of course technical procedures is anything that is out of your scope of knowledge that you need to know how to do. There's steps to it. And of course deliverable is anything that they get a hold of. So we asked Meredith, we said, well, what do you mean by a deliverable? Do you want manuals? Do you want HTML help files? And she said anything. So we just ran with it.
Okay, so there are a couple of questions that you want to ask yourself when you're considering using multimedia. The first is, will the deliverable be enhanced through added realism? And also, will the addition of multimedia help reveal something that text alone could not do?
Yeah, because if you're going to do multimedia, you really need to do it right. And that takes time, that takes effort, that takes money. And if it's just going to be something that's going to be tacked on, like you just think, oh, that's cool, we should totally just throw that on there, then it's probably not the best use of your resources. To really use multimedia, you have to think, is this actually going to do something for the user? Are they going to use it? Is it something that needs demonstration? Or, like you say, some kind of audio file or something like that along with it?
Okay, so we're going to have a demonstration, and we have already chosen our volunteer, Oren. Please stand up, and we want you, we're going to take you, this is our technical procedure, we want you to dance like you're riding a horse. No, we don't quite mean like that. Here, let us show you a GIF that will show you what we mean. Okay, so this is more of what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Alright. And here's a front view, so you get two different views and know exactly how to perform this dance when you're riding like a horse.
Which is really great, because if you don't understand one perspective like this one, you say, well, I don't quite get what 1 foot is doing. Then you can back it up and go, oh, okay, there's from another perspective. And I think that's really cool. It's a cool thing about multimedia, is you can, if you want to learn how to dance like a horse, you can find different ways to do that.
Okay, so we're going to talk about some of the advantages of multimedia. We did some research and found out that from a cognitive psychology perspective, there's this theory called the dual coding theory, and that says that information can be encoded in two forms, and that is visual and verbal. So information is more readily retrievable from the memory if it is in two forms as opposed to one. Take, for example, the noun cat versus the noun virtue. We are more quickly define the word cat than we do virtue, because we have an image of a cat in our head that we associate with the word cat, whereas with virtue we don't necessarily have a specific image to associate with it.
And even then, many of us, when we think of something like virtue, we think of, say, a church, or when we think of justice, we think of a courthouse or something like that. There's usually some kind of mental association, even if it's not direct, to whatever you're thinking about.
Right, and also from an engineer standpoint, multimedia has an advantage because for many reasons, like it reduces storage space, it reduces search and retrieval time, provides faster global information updates, and it builds user confidence in the latest info.
And really, I think one thing with multimedia is if you have very visual learners, like a lot of engineers are, like a lot of mathematicians are, if you're giving them instructions, why not cater to them? Why not give them that technical data in the way that they're going to understand? If they're visual people and you're not giving that to them, you're neglecting part of the population, you're neglecting part of your audience, and you're not meeting their needs. And I think it makes a lot of common sense, wouldn't you agree?
I agree.
To display, say, if you're working on an engineering project, to use computer-aided design or something like that, to actually say, here's what we're talking about, and they can go, oh, okay, put two and two together.
And companies are coming up with more and more innovative ways to deliver technical procedures, and one of those ways is through employee training games.
Yeah, I found a game, it's I think for the iPad, and it is to help train employees on financial compliance. So there's a really complicated law, the Sarbanes-Oxley law, and it was a sweeping kind of overhaul of you have to report this if you were doing corporate taxes, you can't report that if you're doing corporate taxes or something like that, and it actually immerses you in kind of an environment. It says, well, what if you're going through your coworkers, you need to borrow something out of your coworker's desk, and you see that they have documents that they shouldn't have. What do you do? And it's more of it's more interactive than a rote, here's what the law says, and then you regurgitate it back. It actually puts you in real life situations. And also, even though it uses a pop art style that kind of makes it cool, it also uses actual human, illustrations, and I think that humanizes some of the data, and actually it makes you think about the impact that this financial law has on people's lives.
Right, so, but of course there are also a few disadvantages to using multimedia. The first one is that it's time consuming. When you're using multimedia, it requires many more team members. You have to have animators, script writers, artists, and it's also expensive because you have to hire more people and spend more time.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that in a minute as far as the editing process. One thing that I thought about, or that we thought about too, was your SMEs, your subject matter experts, may have a little bit of resistance to this because they're used to, here's the information, you take it, you turn it into a manual, and that's it. So if you say, hey, why don't we put a screenshot here, or why don't we put a screencast, or something like that, they may say, well, why do you need that? I thought everything was explained clearly, and they may not see the value in that. And then, of course, some end users, they may have some resistance to it. With our younger generations, probably not. But again, that's something to think about with your audience. How resistant are your end users actually going to be? Is it something they're going to use? Is it something they're going to appreciate?
Right, but Anthony, I think we're kind of past that point, and we're over the disadvantages because obviously we are a culture that is immersed in multimedia. We have YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, just in our hands through our cell phones every day. So we're very immersed in the multimedia culture already, and I think that we've kind of gotten over those disadvantages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But with the changing role of this multimedia communication, the role as the technical communicator is also changing. We did some more research and read a paper by Sue Jackson. She wrote it in 2001. She was working for Suncorp. So she was telling us about how her role was incredibly expanded when she was working on a multimedia project. Instead of just going through 2 or 3 levels of editing, she had to go through 6 levels of editing. She had to edit first the storyboards, and then she edited the revised storyboards and the motion files. Then she edited the text of the manual, and then she edited the motion and audio files combined. And then she revised the text manual, and embedded the final multimedia, and then did one final edit of the final deliverables. So obviously there was a lot more time spent, a lot more people involved, and she's a technical editor, and her work was stretching way far beyond just editing words on paper.
Right, and I think that's something that technical communicators are going to have to get used to. We're going to have to get used to going through all these processes, editing storyboards, and actually going in there and editing the film or the animation or whatever. We have to have the soft skills, such as simply being able to recognize what's effective multimedia, and we also have to have those kind of hard skills, like, okay, actually going into Final Cut Pro and cutting this scene out because it's unnecessary or whatever.
Okay, well, Anthony, that leads me to the question, have we reached a zenith? Are we at the height of multimedia in technical communication?
I think that's what it seems like, because a lot of what we found was from 1994, 1995, when this is very cool, this is very innovative, it was supposed to be the hot new thing, and then things just kind of trailed off. I think as we incorporated it into our lives, we said, well, this isn't as cool or flashy. But we have found some ways to deliver multimedia to the end user that can be effective.
Right. The first thing is QR codes. In our first group talked about QR codes. QR codes are already being used pretty widely, but there is some controversy